Well, we've talked about the extraordinary amounts of money being invested in AI many times on the AmberMac Show, and the increasing detachment between AI hype and what AI is actually delivering has made people as unlikely as OpenAI's CEO Sam Altman speculate that AI is in a bubble. Well, now both the International Monetary Fund and the Bank of England are warning that the enormous AI valuations and overwrought stock prices won't last forever, and that they expect the bubble to burst sooner rather than later. The potential effects of a burst could be disastrous, and if you remember the 2000 dot-com bubble bursting, you may recall that the Nasdaq fell almost 80% and it took 15 years to return to 2000 levels. One part of the concern is the risky nature of some circular deals like the ones AI has been making with NVIDIA and AMD, whereby NVIDIA invests in OpenAI, knowing that those investment dollars will be returned to NVIDIA's pockets when OpenAI buys gear from NVIDIA, and then NVIDIA will then take that money to reinvest in OpenAI, who will then buy more gear from NVIDIA, and so on and so on. NBC News described an even broader circular deal that's going on here, where NVIDIA plans to invest in OpenAI, which is buying cloud computing from Oracle, which is buying chips from NVIDIA, which has a stake in CoreWeave, which is providing artificial intelligence infrastructure to OpenAI. So the problem is these kinds of deals can distort the values of companies involved by making it look like the individual companies are experiencing growth when they're really just handing the same money around in a circle. And this creates big risks that can cascade disastrously with the failure of any company in that chain. If we look at the broader AI picture, over 1/3 of the market value of S&P 500 companies comes from what Wall Street calls the Magnificent Seven. These are Apple, Alphabet, Amazon, Meta, Microsoft, NVIDIA, and Tesla. And guess what? Every single solitary one of those is deeply invested in AI. So if there's a loss of confidence in AI investments, then there can be enormous impacts on the market. Indeed, we recently covered how the U.S. economy outside of AI investments is essentially in recession, and that AI investments now outstrip the entirety of consumer spending in value. So we're going full-on Kenny Loggins into the danger zone on this as far as I'm concerned. But let's take a look at what AI is actually achieving, especially in enterprise. You've heard of AI slop. Well, work slop is the version of that inside companies where AI-generated work consumes a lot of resources, but doesn't necessarily produce anything particularly useful. And the Toronto Star had a great article on this, noting that Harvard and Stanford University researchers pointed out that top AI products that businesses have paid large sums of money for end up actually reducing the productivity of those companies because of the preponderance of work slop. And beyond that, S&P Global reported that 42% of companies they surveyed who tried AI pilot projects have abandoned most of them. And then on top of this, an MIT study published in August found that 95% of organizations in their study who had invested in AI had achieved no return on those investments. 95% of companies spending lots of money and achieving no return is not a recipe for success. But hey, you know, those AI companies need that training data, so they have to keep making big promises in order to continue their progress. So they're trapped in a circle there as well. Some people inside the industry certainly seem to be enjoying a bit of rose-colored glasses around this. Google's ex-CEO Eric Schmidt, when asked about the AI bubble, said, quote, "I don't think that's going to happen here, but I'm not a professional investor. What I do know is that the people who are investing hard-earned dollars believe the economic return over a long period of time is enormous. Why else would they take the risks?" Well, that's all well and good, but let's pair that with Mark Zuckerberg's recent declaration that he'd rather misspend a couple of $100 billion than to not be competitive in the race for AI. And then let me ask you, does that sound like somebody deciding what they want to do with their hard-earned dollars? Or does it just sound like people with more money than they know what to do with, putting the rest of us at risk so they can pursue a questionable sci-fi dream that might never become reality? I'm the other Mac.